Gary Pearcy, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me.
Now we started in the same regiment together. You were in D4 and I was in C4, so I remember running into you in the hallways during Beast and all the rest. So it's been a few years
Probably,
ago, of course.
yeah, pinging into each other,
Right.
trying
You
to,
really don't get to know someone until you've pinged into them in the middle of the hallway.
right. It has a whole completely different meaning to some of us, right?
Absolutely. Tell us where you are and what you're up to now.
Yeah, so I am happily retired right now. Just recently retired, about a year and a half into retirement, and still figuring out what I want to do when I grow up.
There you go.
Uh, we, you know, after having a nice military career, I stayed in for about 12 years and banged around in the corporate world. Um, moved back home. I'm now in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. That's Delaware's our home. That's where I grew up.
Yeah,
Have lots of family around. So that was a priority for both me and my wife. We retired basically together. Came back home after having been away since we both left for college. So we had always come back to Delaware to vacation in the summertime, and probably over the course of the past 5 to 10 years had decided this is where we're going to move back to when we retired,
it's great.
and made that jump
Now, was
back
your
right
wife a high
around
school sweetheart or just someone you knew?
it. We've actually known each other since we were 10 years old. She's been one of
Really?
my sister's best friends ever since we started the fifth grade. We went to middle school together, competed against each other. We dated a little bit back then. When we left, for college, we both went our own ways, and this is my second marriage and her second marriage, and we both
Okay.
have one child each, and ironically, both of our children live in New Orleans. So we have a little place
Yeah.
down in New Orleans that we go to on a regular basis, and in fact, my our daughter, which is Laurie's daughter,
Uh-huh.
is here this week with our only grandchild. We have a grandchild granddaughter getting ready to turn 3 years old.
Oh
So
boy. All right.
so yeah, we're just enjoying life right now.
That's great. Okay, so you came back together later in life. So I'm not sure what
We did.
percent club that is, but it's a good percent that you came back together.
It is a good percent club, and yeah, certainly the story that we were high school sweethearts at a point, and have always stayed in contact with each other over the
Yeah.
years. To have known somebody for hate to say 50 plus years,
Yeah.
and
Right.
find out you've got your best friend, you got someone who has the same interests you do, and we live a charmed life,
In
that's
the
for
same
sure.
hometown, which is a big deal because you both have family, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, both Laurie's family and my family. We have a lot of siblings. Her parents are still around. They're here, and tons of nieces and nephews. In fact, that's how we recently spent the Fourth of July. Big
Right.
family picnic, and we just experiencing a little bit of a heat wave here too lately. So,
Right.
hot Fourth of July fireworks, cooking out is a really good weekend.
That's the payoff. That's good. Good for you. And then retirement just last year, so you're relatively fresh to it. What have you kind of waded into your early retirement?
Yeah, so still feeling my way around. When As we retired and moved here back to Delaware, moved into a really nice community at the beach, and I've taken up golf. I've always been a golfer, never played a lot, but am now a member at our golf club here, and I'm playing a ton of golf. So that's like
Okay.
one of my priorities. But work wise, just dabbling in the consulting world a little bit. I spent the last 30 years in the payments industry.
Yeah.
So I'm just keeping in touch, getting a lot of outreach in terms of coming on for some consultations and things like that, and I get to pick and choose it. So
Yeah. Right.
I still just still deciding what do I want to do. Do I want to do that permanently? Do I want to do it more frequently, etc.?
Yeah.
The weather here is pretty nice, pretty mild in the wintertime. So, and for the past couple of years, we've really focused on, we're going down to see our children down in New Orleans. We're going down to, spending a few weeks in Florida in the wintertime. So
Yeah.
we're still getting our feet under the retirement
Yeah,
thing.
you get into a rhythm, right? So the first things we get
Right.
set up, and then you get into a rhythm, and still doing a little bit
Exactly.
of controlling your time. Good for you. That's
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
And so the golf game is on the rise anyway.
The golf game is on the rise. I've got a little, it's actually tennis elbow from playing so
Oh,
much
yeah.
golf.
Okay. Well,
My,
there you go.
my ortho recently, prescribed me to do about 8 weeks of physical therapy to get those tendons, strengthened a little bit. But
Right.
that's from the frequent golf. I know nobody's going to,
Here's your public
shed
service message, folks. Be careful of your volume.
no one's going to shed a tear for me. That's for sure.
Oh, I guarantee you. Although your fellow golfers might say, boy, that cuts into that training time.
It does.
Practice time, not training time. Absolutely. So you started in that town. You ended up back in that town. Let's go all the way back to a young Gary Pearcy. What was it about the military academy that caught your eye?
Yeah, so I was a military brat. My father's a
Okay.
20-year military veteran. He grew up in the NCO side of life. He retired as a master sergeant.
Okay.
So I bounced around as a youngster. Born in D.C., moved to San Francisco, spent time in Okinawa. Then my father came back and we moved back to Delaware. That was where he was from,
Got it.
and that's where we grew up. And as he was still in the military at that point, he did a hardship tour over in Germany, and
Yeah.
worked in the D.C. Maryland area. So I was a military brat. Got interested in the academy in high school, pretty early in high school. I was an athlete throughout high school, and played all sports: baseball, basketball. Soccer was my primary sport, and actually got recruited by West Point to play soccer there.
You did.
And
Okay.
at that point, my father he never pushed me into anything, but we were also a blended family at the time. I was one of 7 kids, and it was like, it might be in your best interest, take notice of the academies. We're kind of
Yeah.
in between West Point and the Naval Academy, and I had even the Air Force, looking at me from a soccer perspective. So ended up choosing West Point. My father was Army, so
Okay.
I kind of had an affinity toward the Army at that
And
point.
at what age did you stabilize there in Delaware? Because you lived in a lot of places
Yeah.
as a kid.
Yeah, when we came back from Okinawa, I was probably 6 years old at that point.
Okay.
So 6 through 17
So that
years
really is
old.
your hometown relative to your
Right.
experience. Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. So will soccer stand out in Delaware, military background, and how about academics? Were you an academic standout as well?
I was solid in academics. I was, always top of the class, near the top of the class. Certainly top 2 or 3%. I didn't graduate at the cum laude or anything, but
Yeah.
I did pretty well in academics. I was, not an issue getting in with my, SAT scores. Mine were perfectly acceptable to get into
Yeah. Right.
anywhere. And I was always thinking, we lived in northern Delaware, so Philadelphia is kind of like the hub, and that's where I kind of was thinking, if I'm going to go to college, it'll probably be in that Philadelphia area somewhere. And of course, when the academy came along, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm all in.
Yeah. Now, soccer was not as popular back then. We were growing up.
Right.
What did the scene look like for you in terms of championships and all the rest?
Yeah, so in Delaware, I was in the high school championships every year.
Okay.
I was a goal scorer back then. I was, fleet of foot. I was, I was a pretty sinewy type of guy, pretty fast, and could put the ball on goal. So, but yeah, it wasn't as popular back then. I mean, through the years when our kids were growing up, it seemed like soccer has always gotten more and more popular
Yeah,
as
right.
a sport. And of course, I'm loving life right now with the World Cup being played here
I
in
can only
the
imagine.
North America. So,
Only
uh,
slightly less fleet of foot, but still a fan nonetheless.
certainly much less fleet of foot at this point.
Oh, that's terrific. And then, so fast forward, so you had the military. I guess you were acquainted with the military because
Yeah.
you still had the 6 through 17 experiences living in Delaware. There, when you got to the academy, our day, all the rest, a true shocker, or was it a little bit that seemed familiar when you showed up?
Yeah, it seems very familiar. Again, my father, kind of like uh, not hard, but he was very, we were
Yeah,
disciplined growing up. It
it was not an unfamiliar aesthetic.
very, very familiar. So in terms of the discipline and structure and the organization and, you
Yeah,
know, keeping your barracks room straight and
yeah.
away, dusting your shoes
He's
off,
seen a bit
like
of this
that was.
before.
Yeah, that wasn't a tall order for me. I was comfortable in that environment when we came up, when I
Okay.
came up for our day and everything. So
And when you came
there,
to our day, how did you arrive at the academy? Because it's so different now.
yeah,
Um, I- it,
yeah,
some of the stories are funny how we showed up. Like a lot of us just showed up and got dropped off in town. And Joe Helmick was telling me he walked over through town, kind of thing. How did you get taken to the academy when you started?
yeah. So we came up on our day, and we really lived only about 3 hours away, 3.5 hours away. So we drove up in the morning, got up probably on the road around 6 o'clock in the
Yeah,
morning, got there by mid morning, went right to Mikey Stadium.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Me, my mom, my dad, one of
Okay.
my brothers, one of my brothers, and one of my sisters at the time came up for the road trip up there. And then, again, we went to Mikey Stadium, listened to the little introduction that they give, and they said, "Okay, new cadets, stand up. You're going to come over here to the right, and parents, just sit where you're at. We've got a full day for you." And that we didn't not realizing that was goodbye at that point. that was like that was one shocker of our day, was
They
like,
didn't add that in the
you know
briefing. They just
that
said,
was like, yeah, I was like, okay, well, we'll catch up later before you go home. Well, that didn't happen, of
yeah,
course. Right? So yeah,
the
and
old
then
the
you
old
know
catch up at the
yeah, by the end of the day, when we're marching down to Ike Hall, I could see them, my parents and my siblings on the side, and I wanted to like wave goodbye to them, but I
yeah,
know that they'd have no idea it was me because we all looked the same at that point.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess now they give them 60 seconds. They say formally, you have 60 seconds to say goodbye. So maybe it was on the back of such
Yeah,
awkward partings that they
yeah.
learned that.
Well, the Corps has, right?
Yeah,
Giving them
it
60
seems to have
seconds.
improved given some of the things I've seen. What so which beast? How did Beast Barracks? Were you seventh or eighth company? Where were you? Because I know we were in the same area.
Yeah, we were there. I think it was seventh,
We were
right?
seventh company.
Who was
Lionel
I had?
Ortiz, and his
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, Mike Root was in the group. Jeff
yep,
Trahan, a couple of those guys were
yep.
in my squad. Charlie McMaster was my roommate back then in Beast. So I mean, it was hot. I mean, you learned at that point, like, the choices that you make are important. Are we going to go get some cookies and juice from the chapel, or we going to go?
Very important decisions.
Those were the important decisions back at that time. But I enjoyed it. I got out for Corps Squad doing the soccer tryouts at that
Yeah.
point during
So you
Beast.
were
And
recruited, so you were on a track to be with the team,
right,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I mean, it was
How
not a
did
whole
soccer
lot.
handle Beast? Because I know some of they pulled out some of the folks for football, baseball, et cetera. How did soccer work with?
Soccer was just, like, I think in the afternoons we were doing physical activities, and that was the point in time that, we had to run down to the fields,
Yep.
where we did the APRT, what, not Buffalo, sorry, that's the other
That's
side,
the
but
other side. Yeah, down by the river courts. It was
yeah,
no, the river courts
what
were the other
river
way. Yeah,
courts?
down where the sewage treatment plant is. That's how I
Yes,
remember it.
that's so I had to basically during we had tryouts and had a
Right.
bunch of field setup. So there was a lot more people that were not recruited trying out
Yeah.
for soccer. But it was a run down the hill to the sewer treatment to the fields down there, and we'd practice. And it was really at that point it was pretty much like we played a lot of games and did one 3-on-3 and 6-on-6 type of skills type of stuff. But it was kind of like you were nonstop. You'd run down there, you'd do that training
Sure.
practice, and then you'd run back and then so it was like a
Did you have upperclassmen with you when you did that? Or was just all new cadets kind of going through drills?
it's just all new cadets
New
and
cadets.
I believe I believe there probably was some upperclassmen down there. I can't remember who it was, but it was
Yeah.
mostly the coaches that were
Right.
organizing the training.
Now, did you have to retry out, or as a recruited athlete, you were considered on the team?
I treated it as a tryout. I didn't know. I did at that point. It was kind of like, yeah, you still, even though I was a military brat and kind of
Sure.
understood that it was kind of like I don't know what's going on
Yeah.
necessarily. So I better show off my skills and
Right.
do my best, right? Because if I'm not going to play soccer, I'm going to be pretty disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah. But it worked out, I imagine.
It worked out. Yeah, it
Yeah.
worked out really well.
Okay. And so we had some. So Andy Napoli was on the team. Johnny Max famously was on the team. Who were
Hmm.
some other folks you played soccer with?
Yeah, Jimmy Kim was on the team. Fred Nomer was on the
Yeah.
team. Yeah, we had a good class
Yeah.
of 86ers
And did your
on
position
the team.
change, or were you still?
Yeah, it did change. I moved into the midfield when I played at West Point. I started up front, moved to the midfield, played a little bit of defense, and played a little bit of up front forward. I got moved around a lot. Coach Joe Shavaro was he liked the versatility that I had. So, and I guess, if I had a trait or if I was known for something, it was like I had an engine. I mean, it would just, I would never stop. I didn't get fatigued. I would just like be a little energizing bunny out there.
Yeah. And now once we went into academics and that portion of the year, how taxing was all core squads going to be taxing? But how was the
It,
schedule relative to your academics at
yeah.
West?
Yeah, so it was one it was that's all I knew. So it wasn't like I can compare it to anything else. The academics were the academics. The first year is tough. You're up early in the morning, going to formation and breakfast and all that stuff, and then doing
Right.
academics. And then come 2:30 or 3:30, whenever we finished our classes, and we were out on the soccer field practicing, or even in the off season, we're out train, in the weight room and running and all that stuff. So that's all I knew. That's how my afternoons were always spent. So I just got into a routine with the academics, just keeping up on the academics, and I was a computer science major, so it was an interesting time in that field.
That was probably
In
another
that we
place where we ran into each other, and because I was aspiring in computer science, but I was one of those that got just squirted out the side. So, and but D4 as a plebe, how did you find activities there? You were one company over, having to listen to us shout our Cowboys chant every morning. Other than that,
we
irritation.
Yeah, D4 was, I mean, I think that whole plebe year was kind of, it went by so fast for me. We had some really good upperclassmen. You had a couple that were, like the Hayes, get but I kind of knew I could regurgitate my poop. I could,
Yeah.
I could, spout off the days and everything else pretty well. I was always a believer of I don't have to be the fastest one. I just got to outrun that slower one.
Who was
Right?
me? That's what we were picking into each other in the hallway.
Yeah, I didn't attract too much attention. That was
Yeah.
purposeful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. So went fast, and so then Any adventures, Felipe? So, how did that soccer? Were you on the traveling team? I know some of the teams, the
Yep.
plebes stay. But you would travel with the team.
I would travel with them. We had, our away schedule. It was always kind of, that was exciting adventure for us, as plebes. It was a getaway. We weren't under everyone's thumb. We'd, have a per diem. We'd go out and, grab a bite to eat, stay at the hotel, go play, have a training meal in the morning of the game, go play the game in the afternoon or early evening. Yeah, that was always a nice getaway, and everybody, people generally, stayed up on their studies. While we bus rode everywhere. The only place that we went where we got on an airplane was the Air Force Academy.
Yeah, right. So it's mostly the regional. You played
Right.
regionally, except for Air Force.
We did, yeah, yeah. New York soccer back then, there a lot of good colleges in New York that we go up and played. Hartwick, played LIU,
Yeah.
Colgate, all the New York region, Upper New Jersey regions that was our schedule pretty much.
And how competitive was the team? I know teams go through boom and less boom.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you have a
We
good team?
Yeah, we had pretty good teams. We were always at the top of the league.
Okay.
Not always number one, but we were always very competitive.
Yeah.
And I think, that the healthy thing about the academies is we always got the academies to gauge ourselves with, go play,
Right.
we'd go down to Navy, go play at Air Force. They'd come to us. And that was like, you were in peak form at that point in
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, the New York region for soccer was very competitive. There were players like I can't remember the guy's name. Like we played at Delphi, and they had a great sweeper who went on to play for the U.S. men's national team and stuff
Oh,
like
there you
that.
go.
So you had some good players that you'd go up against in that area.
Yeah.
So it was enjoyable. I really enjoyed the Corps Squad life
Good for
throughout.
you. Yeah. And now computer science, how did that emerge? I know it was becoming a hot topic when we were in school, but how did that become an area of study for you?
That was it was something that I was interested in. I was very, my number skill, my math skills, that was very strong. That was kind of where I was leaning.
Okay.
um and then, when you get to see the plethora of opportunities and studies when you get to college. This was something that was a learning experience for me as well. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I gravitated toward the mathematical and science side of the house. And when computer science was talked about, it caught my attention. I was like, no, I think I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
If not knowing, it was kind of like, well, just because you're good with numbers doesn't mean you're going to be good with this discipline, this science. So it was kind of like rolling the dice a little bit.
Yeah.
And even back then, like, when we were in school, we were going from card punching into floppy disks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was very nascent. It was very, very humble beginnings in terms of studies and industry and things of that nature. So it was kind of nice to have that. I didn't really utilize it in the military that much. Towards the end, I became an operation research systems analyst. I went to that training, and that was
Uh-huh.
more mathematical modeling and simulation.
Right.
wasn't really computer science. But when I left the military, I was able to utilize my degree
Yeah.
in computer science to land my first job. They're like, "Oh, you're a West Point guy with a computer science background. Boom, here,
No
here's what
kidding.
we need." Yeah.
Man.
So, and I didn't, my first job was really kind of an application development role, and I had no skills. I mean, I could do a little bit
Oh,
of
was this was
Fortran
GE, right? Your first job was with GE, or is
with GE. Yeah, when
yeah.
I went to the corporate GE corporate in Fairfield, Connecticut,
Man.
and I ended up being a application development manager in the GE audit staff, and
Good
quickly became
gravy.
quickly became the CIO of the audit staff because my
Man,
boss was this.
I'm listening to this. I should have studied that Fortran a little harder.
Well, again, I'd had none of these skills. It was all leadership skills.
Right.
This is the gift of the
Right.
academy is that, you're a leader. In the military, the
Yeah.
academy and the military life, and that's what corporations were looking for. From they want junior military officers to come in and have the discipline, build the team, blah, all of those things that are like second nature to us when we get out when we're out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, branch choice. Talk through kind of your thinking there and computer scientist, a soccer player of note. Talk
Yep.
through your branch choice.
So there's a couple of other components to my West Point life too. So I made some poor choices as a cadet. I ended up with 3 Class 1 slugs.
Oh, Gary.
Uh, so I was a double century man. I I got suspended. I had suspended separation, so I left at the
Is that
end
right?
of our fourth our senior year, first semester. Everything kind of bubbled out and they suspended me. I went home for the last couple weeks of the semester, and I had to, I became a December grad. I had to make up another academic year.
So this,
So
this is a family program, of course. Can we discuss the nature of your malfeasances?
the nature of my family, wrong place, wrong time.
That's
And
yeah.
unfortunately it involved alcohol 3 different
Well, yeah,
times. I mean, wasn't necessarily for me. It was like,
yeah.
it was,
You
like,
were just adjacent to it.
I was adjacent to it. My third one was like ring weekend. We had a
Yeah,
scrimmage soccer game. I'm going into Highland Falls to pick up my date for ring weekend, and
yeah,
a couple buddies wanted some Jack Daniels or something like that. I picked it
yeah.
up. And they went out and had too good of a time, and it came back. Gary Pearcy's the one that supplied this.
So did you become a trafficker? Craig Rollins told the story about they labeled him a trafficker. Was that in your
I
slug?
did. I didn't get that. I
You didn't
didn't
get the
get that
benefit of being a trafficker.
but I do remember, in being in the superintendent's office, and Scott pointing up at at one of the superintendents and saying to me, "That man would kick your ass out of here." So I did have some intimate discussions with our senior leaders at West Point.
That's an excellent way. Did you go through all the pictures and say, "How about that one? How about that one?" You found one that would let you stay.
We didn't get that intimate, but yeah, that was I
Not
was
that intimate.
my head was spinning. So, but
Oh my goodness! And that's
but
first
anyway,
of
I
the year.
forget what.
That's tough. Ring week. That's first of the year. So that's a
Yeah,
stressful
yeah,
thing, right?
right. But I think we were talking a little bit about, like, okay, computer science getting out, and
Yeah.
the decisions that I made. I forget where
Branch.
I
We're
was
talking about
really
your branch
going.
choice.
Oh, the
How
branch
that?
choice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So academically, fine. Uh, Military history, the military component of our evaluation, top of the class. I was,
Yeah.
I think I held a record for the indoor obstacle course at one point
You
in
did.
time. But so I was able to branch where I wanted to branch. I was able to go Army Aviation. That's what I really wanted to do,
Yeah.
and ultimately, did get down there to Fort Rucker and become, go through. I was able to get an advanced aircraft transition. I was able to become a UH-60 pilot,
Okay.
um, and that's what I did through my military career. I was in aviation, yeah, and I went to some really good units. The Second Armored Cavalry Division when we went to Desert Storm,
Yeah. I was reading your
82nd,
profile. You
yeah,
had quite a
82nd
run.
Airborne. Yeah, so really enjoyed the aviator life, and again, I kind of compare it a little bit to, as computer science was kind of a nascent industry. I think that aviation, while not nascent, they were flying Hueys and everything, Cobras and all that back in Vietnam, and always have had helicopters in our
Yeah.
in the military. Coming out during the time when aviation was transforming into a more lethal technical force in the military, with the advancement of the Black Hawks and the Apaches and all that, that was during my time as I was in aviation. So
Do
it was
you
really,
remember the moment where aviation caught your eyes? Was there like so a lot of people talk
yeah.
about CTLT or going all the way back to the Fort Knox visits and those things. Was there a moment where you looked and said, "That's it. That's what I want to do"?
It was true. We were making selections for what we are going to do in the summer of our junior year. And I went and did the test to do the aviation. We had a 5-week stint down in Port Rucker, Alabama for aviation, and I put
Yeah,
my name in the hat for that. And that was like one of the greatest summer experiences of my life. Was to
sure.
went down to Fort Rucker, Alabama. First we get there like on a Friday, and you get told it's okay. This is a long week. You have the weekend off. Cadets that had been there prior to us. There was a fan corps of military, West Point cadets waiting for us when we got there, and immediately we zipped off down to Panama City Beach in Florida.
Welcome
you
to
know,
aviation.
exactly. And that's when it clicked. It was like, this is for me.
You're roaring down, with your head out the window of the car, roaring to Panama City Beach. This is my branch. Good for you.
this,
And so you
this
did do that advanced or that early phase
right,
and
right.
get ahead of it. That's great. And so a December grad, we didn't talk at all about B3. It's some pretty distinguished classmates. Tim Knight's from B3. Got a
Very.
long list of great classmates coming out of B3. That was a good group, B3.
A really, really good group. I mean, I am a slacker compared to, I mean, the likes of Tim Knight
Yeah.
and Fitzy and Dave Urban, and I mean, we got some really strong play. I was very fortunate. I'll put it that way,
Yeah.
to be amongst them.
Yeah. It's a good group. Aviator, come out, December grad. How did the December grad impact your assignments and all that, or not really? You just went into the system, did your aviation school, and off you went.
Yeah, I don't think that it impacted too much. So again, like one of my best friends from West Point is Rob Healy, and Rob stuck
Mhm.
around to be a grad assistant that
Yeah.
first semester. So he and I, that's where our friendship really blossomed, because we went through, I think we went to Sears School together, and we did a couple of classes in between West Point and our officer basic course down there, and so and then we lived together the whole time we were there. We both got the transition to UH-60, so we developed a very healthy relationship while we're in Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Okay. So you
But
took off down to
you know
school together. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, you did the officer basic and you did the flight school, and then off you went. So I don't think that there was anything beneficial or disabling in terms of being a December
Yeah.
grad.
Right.
A lot
I've
of
never
our
actually spoken with a December grad, so in this podcast, yeah. Where did you all live as December grads? Were you all kind of consolidated into one corner of the?
no, just live with your company. I was a B3 bandit for
What was
three
that
and a half
like? Like
years.
everyone was gone, and you were. How did
Yeah,
that work?
so you establish develop relationships with your classmates, and I had good relationships with the class of '87. So a lot of good friends who have gone on that I've been able to keep in
Okay.
contact with over the years. I mean, I just roomed with somebody that was a class of
So you just
'87
stayed
instead
in
of
V3 and you were just
right.
there for the
Yep.
December grad. I
Yeah,
know.
and just for that first semester. So, and I think our graduating class of in December was probably about 13 of us or so.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we did our little ceremony down at Ike Hall, and
Off you went.
off we went.
Good for you. So you got the transition, and then talk about your first assignment, and off you went.
Yeah. Yeah. So first assignment was to Germany.
Yeah.
Germany. That's, it was again some choices in life. I had a girlfriend at Fort Rucker, and we decided to get married, pretty quickly because I was on my way to Germany, which was fine. We had, Germany was really I loved it. I loved being, we lived out on the economy. We didn't live in the barracks or anything.
Okay.
Developed some really good friendships with our neighbors while we were there. Probably the biggest thing there, though, is we deployed to Desert Storm out of
Yeah.
Germany. I was a platoon leader, a UH-60 platoon leader. I had what they called the ash and trash. So I had the command and control aircraft, as well as, any dignitaries that were coming over. We flew along the East German border, Czechoslovakia border. That was kind of the area that we were in.
Yeah.
But, really enjoyed, that was, when you say, I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up, and that was what I was doing when I was growing up, was being in aviation in Germany, Nuremberg, Germany, getting to fly and experience the military from that perspective. That was just eye-opening and enjoyable, and character building, the whole 9 yards. So that was really enjoyable. Got deployed out of Germany to Desert Storm.
What were the missions there when you got to? Because everything obviously was a different context there. What kind of work did you do there?
So the coolest thing, one of the coolest things, was I had completed my platoon leadership assignment, and I became the motor officer.
Okay.
For our squadron, and so I was on point to, one of the folks on point to deploy out of Germany. So taking helicopters apart, putting them on the railroad, the German railroad system, shipping them up to Bremerhaven,
Right.
deploy, getting everything on the ship and deployed out, and then coming back, and we'd fly out to Saudi and put it all back together. That was a really cool assignment. And
Now,
then
a motor officer in an mechanized infantry unit, there was a sense where the troops kind of kept
yeah,
their
right.
own vehicles maintained, but really at an aviation unit, you have technicians at a higher level. How did that work as a motor officer? Do you have to go through special training?
Yeah.
Or?
So I think it's more similar to what you did in the mechanized infantry,
Right?
in that we had a fleet of Hemmets and Humvees and all kind. You still got to be able to get logistics out in the field, gas and food and water and all that. A lot of that was able to get. You could do that via the UH-60s in terms of moving things, but still, what, as the motor officer, I was responsible for making sure that the motorized fleet was ready to move and
Oh, is
everything.
that right? Okay, so it's the
Yeah,
ground
yeah.
equipment, support equipment.
And so the mechanics for the aircraft, for we had Blackhawks, OH-58s, and we didn't have the Apaches. We had the Cobras.
Right.
All of that maintenance is done by the units in those units, not by the motor officer. So
Got it.
So
you're
there
the
is
ground.
like this.
So it was
Right.
very similar to a mechanized infantry unit in terms of.
Right.
I got you. Okay.
Exactly.
And so you deployed over there as the motor officer. I think it's interesting that your group for Desert Storm, we really were the folks throwing things on the ships. So just because we'd reach the XO and motor officer level.
Right,
So,
right, exactly.
um,
Yep.
and then where were you stay? Where were you? What was your unit when you got over there?
Yeah, so we landed there in Dhahran, I think it
Hmm.
was, and then
Yep.
built up the fleet, and then just kept continuously moved down the pipeline road
Hmm.
further and further to the west of Iraq, and then after the Air Force campaign, which lasted a long time.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, well, we finally got the order, and I was in the second ACR, which is a lead
okay,
element for the first Armored Cav.
yeah, yeah.
So, the Armored Cav gets the call to go in, and we're flying in and cutting across Iraq to go to Kuwait. And like, it was nothing like deployments were after Desert Storm. Like, we didn't tough it out in terms of like, fight in the hills of Afghanistan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Our mission was pretty quick. That war was over very quickly. And, you
And
know,
were you the motor officer throughout the whole time?
yeah, I was a motor officer throughout the whole time. I got to fly quite a bit,
You did.
yeah, had to, and I had, having been there, been one of the more senior first lieutenants, and I got promoted to captain while I was there.
Hmm.
I had, a good network of guys that, we bonded together, talked a lot about the missions, talked a lot about, keep just trying to stay sharp in terms of, our training and what we're getting ready to do.
Yeah.
So it was a really professional workforce, and everybody was just kind of, I wouldn't, they're probably getting a little bored with the air campaign that was going on and waiting to do something, but trying to stay mentally focused on what is it that we're going to need to do as we move in. What are the things that we needed, working in an environment that is very arid, dry, dusty,
Yeah.
not real conducive to helicopter operations.
I,
That
re- I,
was kind
re-
of like the big focus
I
during that.
remember that conversation on the impact of the desert on the stuff you all were having to fly.
Yeah, yep.
So any surprising things you ran into over there, or any things that were odd in terms of anything from the desert, or um, any curveballs?
Um, Probably not so many curveballs. I think that the
Okay.
fires that got started and the tar pits and stuff like that
Right.
were things that you know you questioned, and like, okay, how are we going to deal with this? Do we need to deal with this? Is
Yeah.
this our mission type of thing? I think that a more interesting. I was like a purchasing officer
Yeah.
for the squadron, so I was able to go out and go go into the towns and meet with the locals and buy supplies and stuff like that. So that was pretty interesting too, just kind of seeing a different way of life. You know,
Yeah.
it really is, as you start thinking about how life is for us and what we enjoy in life, our
Yeah.
freedoms and liberties and everything, and then seeing a different culture and how they enjoy life, or how life is different.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of like the biggest eye-opening thing for me. That one of the biggest takeaways for me is like, I will never ever take for granted what we have as a society, as a country, as a people, when you compare it to elsewhere.
Yep.
The living conditions that we have are exceptional. The things that we can do are exceptional, and that helps to tie everything back to like, why did you do this? And like, that's the real, we had a mission, we have a mission, we continue to like defend and try to maintain and move ahead, advance with our life and our lifestyles in the U.S. And when
Mhm.
you compare it to others, we're very fortunate.
Yeah. So the end of Desert Storm, you had kind of fulfilled most of your commitment, or if not all the commitment,
Yep.
but you stayed in for 12. What was the thinking?
Yeah, so I was enjoying life. It was really, I enjoyed being an aviation officer.
Yeah.
And my second assignment was to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, with the 82nd Airborne Division, and I was like, I was hooah. I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. And getting there to Fort Bragg, um, I was just in my element. So I really enjoyed, being an aviation officer. Great friends, everything that we did in the military. I was like, and there were opportunities for me, and I know for you, like early outs and incentives to
Sure.
get out as an officer, to thin the ranks, that I didn't even give it any consideration. I really enjoyed what I was doing, and
Yeah.
and so I did those years at Fort Bragg, and then ended up going on to Fort Rucker. As I'd checked the box. I'd been a company commander at Fort
Yeah.
Bragg, and did the S3, assistant S3, did the S1 role. It got full experience in a lot of different disciplines that certainly helped out as I moved into my civilian world, civilian life. Um, that I was able to, just kind of really like, why would I want to get out at this point? And,
Right.
and ultimately I reached that point, but not in the 82nd Airborne. It's like after
Did you
that when I
did you cross paths with any classmates in a fun or funny way, or did we all ran into each
um
other out there in the Army? But
we did. John Magnus was in my unit in Germany,
is that right?
and we crossed paths a few times,
Yeah, yeah,
uh rest his soul.
yeah.
um uh, Johnny Mack was besides being a soccer
Hmm.
teammate of mine. We played in the USER championships in soccer in
Is that
Germany,
right?
and then came to Fort Bragg together.
Right.
Um, yeah, so there, and yeah, there's several
Yeah, you run
West
into
Pointers.
people
Yeah,
all sorts of
class of '86. Yeah,
funny corners.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of our guys, and I didn't really put too much thought in it at the time. A lot of people did leave after their commitment and go on and do great things afterwards. I
Mhm.
didn't really think about that until, I was in the throes of like, okay, what am I going to do?
Yeah, so it's coming up on 1999 and 98, 99, and you've had
Yep.
12 years in. What's the thinking in terms of leaving at that point?
Yeah, so the thinking at that point is that it was, I guess life decisions. I was, yeah, I definitely wanted to figure out, what could I do differently? How could I expand
Mhm.
into different areas? How can I utilize my skill sets? I was very nervous as well in terms of like, will my military skill set transition into the civilian workforce?
Sure.
So I was doing a little bit of exploring. A lot of people, the ranks were thinning,
Hmm.
and so that was kind of like the rationale for like, why should I look? Should I be looking? Do I want what's on the what's up next for me in the military?
Yep.
I was going to spend, I think, 3 years in my secondary zone. A year and a half of it was going to be in Korea. That was my next assignment coming out of Fort Rucker before I would go back to Leavenworth for training, and then on to my next assignment. Where I become a XO or something in a back with troops. So knowing
Yeah.
that I was going to be away from troops for a while, that's when I started exploring, doing that junior military officer
It's so
search.
interesting how Korea is the great equalizer and how many of our classmates' stories are at key decision points. Branch said, "How about Korea?"
It was like
So you're just another like the prospect of going to Korea. Say, well, let me look over here.
the prospect of Korea in your secondary zone as well. Like
Right?
I'd be over there doing modeling and simulation, and like
Yeah,
not with troops, and I'm like,
yeah.
that's a long time away from family. And
So you pulled the trigger, and then we referred to it earlier. You landed at
yep,
GE in this IT role that ended up making you the CIO of the audit group,
yep,
which is a really
yep.
unusual path. I mean, that's amazing. So did you get that job just through one of these JMO firms?
Yeah, it was a JMO. I went to a job fair,
Hmm.
interviewed with a couple companies, had a couple of offers that again, I was surprised. There was this medical company in Michigan, Stryker, that was
Yeah.
heavily recruiting me to come, do a role there in Michigan. And I ended up going with GE more so. The benefits for me for going to GE, I mean, obviously I loved the company. It was, the Jack Welch empire back then. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that'd be pretty cool to be in a business like, in a company like that with all these industries that they're involved in. Um, and so yeah, it was just that offer, and it was back in the Northeast, so I'd be close to family. I moved back from Alabama up to Connecticut, which is only a couple hour ride down to Delaware,
Hmm.
and yeah, and yeah, like you said, in terms of a career path, it's like
It's terrific. Yeah, it's great.
I go you utilize a computer science degree to land a job that I'm not a coder or a
Right.
programmer.
Totally unqualified for, but
Right.
carrying the
Exactly.
confidence.
And then transition parlay that into a CIO role,
That's
and
terrific.
then
It's
and then
great.
with being in GE, like I really loved it because it was very similar to the military. You'd spend 3 years doing something, then move on to your next
Yeah.
thing. And so I moved from that CIO role down to a technology manager role down at NBC in New York City. And
Good gravy.
and yeah, parlayed that into a role in what I eventually, I went from NBC over to GE's consumer finance company, which was all doing credit cards and things like that.
That's
And
how you get
that's
into
that
payments
that
and
would
the
end up
infrastructure
being,
for that.
yeah, that would end up being, that would be my not legacy, but my
Yeah,
biggest experience in life was working in the money movement, credit cards, banking areas.
an important area.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's so small companies and entrepreneurial experiences are so lionized in our culture, but really, when you get
Hmm.
into a larger company, they have lots of I'm reacting to your comment where you say every 3 years you get a new job. You get lots of opportunities to go sideways and do, travel laterally to find other roles and things like that. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I did the whole corporate life. Loved it.
yeah.
In both in GE and at Wells Fargo, where I ended up for many years
So
in the
payments
banking.
is a very frothy area.
It's
What was your specialty? What was the thing that you actually got really good at?
Yeah, so really money movement is what my specialty
Okay.
was. So with credit cards, you're going through the credit networks, your Visas and MasterCards using your credit processors
Mhm.
like First Data and others. Um, that's what I translate, what I did at GE Consumer Finance, and then came over to Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo expanded it to becoming more of like product centric with the consumer banking world. I did
Mhm.
the debit cards, the debit accounts, your savings and checking accounts. I managed all that
Okay.
type of thing over in the Wells Fargo world. Transitioned from that side of it into the merchant acquiring side at Wells Fargo,
Okay.
and then I was like working with lots of small and medium and large businesses in terms of how do you accept payments.
Yeah.
What are the tools that a bank has to offer to you to make your life more simple?
Yeah, because that was
So I
the period of the rise of all these different Stripe and these
Right,
different
right,
brands that
yeah,
could
yeah.
offer a similar parallel thing, but they didn't have the backing of the bank. Yeah, yeah, very
Yeah,
familiar.
yeah. Like when we did a couple of big things when I was at Wells Fargo. Like if you remember the financial crisis back in back
I
in
do.
2010, and the like,
Yeah,
being able to absorb a peer bank. Wells Fargo absorbed Wachovia.
yeah,
So that whole combination,
yeah,
pulling together of two big banks, was a big component. Big success, I would say,
yeah.
in the banking world. And then another highlight was when the wallets started coming out, and we did Apple Pay and
Oh, there
Samsung
you
Pay
go.
and things like that. The innovation in the payments world was just it just doesn't stop. you know.
Absolutely.
So that's all, that always excited me and kind of led me to, you know, when I left Wells Fargo, I really went to a payment startup company, you know, utilizing payments in yet a different way. I went
Yeah.
into another industry, which was called the earned wage access industry. I worked for a company called Daily Pay,
Okay.
and we're basically integrated with payroll systems and time management systems for companies to enable the employees of those companies to take their pay as they earn it, you know, when they needed it, as opposed to waiting for payday. They like, okay, so I'm not waiting for my paycheck every 2 weeks. If I need $100 now to pay something that's due, I can just, you know,
Yeah.
use this app to get my money right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was,
It's a
yeah,
former factory.
yeah, a lot of great innovations. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what was the largest size teams you used to run? You were CIO at one
Um,
point, or were you more of an individual contributor?
No, the largest role that I had in terms of number of personnel that I managed was at Wells Fargo. When I was over on the merchant acquiring side, I became the chief operating officer for that business. So I ran product risk, um, the technology teams that supported
Yeah.
that. I had the finance group.
Yeah.
I had a lot of, I was wearing a lot of hats as a chief operating officer there.
So how many people were in that organization?
Yeah, our company, we probably had about 800 people on the
Yeah.
Wells Fargo side, and it was a joint venture with First Data. So on the First Data side, had another, they had our customer service too. So we had another 1,500 people. So it was
Yeah.
a
Okay.
pretty big.
2,300. Yeah, that's why I like talking to classmates. And, oh, you know, I just ran this little thing. But how many people? Well, 2,300 people, you know, that's a brigade. I mean, for goodness sakes. All right. I got
Right,
you. A
right.
lot of moving parts, right? So that's great.
Yeah, that was my brigade commander
Your
assignment.
brigade command, wheeling payments back and forth between two organizations. Good for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, and when did you reconnect with your high school sweetheart and bring that together? So that's all
Yeah,
part of
so
that.
we reconnected. And this became my New Orleans connection. You know,
Yeah.
she was a single mom at that point, living in New Orleans back in. It was right when I was getting out, transitioning out of the military
Okay.
into the civilian life. So right around 98, 97, 98, we started seeing each other. Interesting story. My father was living down in Crestview, Florida, uh, and taking care of his elderly parents at that point. And Crestview was kind of a midpoint between Fort Rucker, Alabama, where I was stationed, and New Orleans. So we connected by meeting down in Pensacola one weekend. You know, she was going down with friends and their kids because it was right before school starting back up in New Orleans, and I said, "Well, I'm going to visit my dad too. Why don't we, you know, have a date down in Pensacola?" So that was back in '97, end of '97, and or middle of '97, and then as I transitioned out and went to work for GE with the audit staff, I was traveling a lot. So I could kind of use New Orleans as my home base.
Ah,
So you know,
there
every
you go.
couple of weeks I would be spending the weekend down in New Orleans, and then we finally got married in 2000.
Okay,
So
great.
it's
Yeah,
so yeah, so it's an easy anniversary to remember. You know, we're coming up on our 26th now.
that's right. I myself was married a second time in 2000, so it really works out.
Simplifying life.
You know what? You young kids, you gotta think these things through ahead of time. That's
Yeah.
terrific. And so 25 you knocked off in 2025. So as you got toward the end there, what was the thinking around hanging up your finance spurs, at least as a formal capacity in a
Yeah,
retirement?
so yeah, I mean, the focus really became quick. It was as both retired, it was pretty hard to shed those habits that we had. You know, wanting to, you know, we're both, you know, working hard, managing important things for the companies that we work for, staying involved, staying plugged in. So disconnecting from that, and like having each other being with each other all the
Yeah.
time. A transition, the work life into the retired life. But I think we've both grown into like embracing the community. First of all, embracing the family, is the most important thing. And we're spending a lot of time with family. My wife's mother lives about a mile and a half from us here. So she gets to tend to her mother,
Yeah.
and we get to see family all the time. And families become like, yeah, this is why we did what we did, is
And
to be with
what was your
family.
last? You moved to Delaware from where?
Yeah, I had moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota,
Hmm.
when I joined Wells Fargo.
Right.
So we spent 18 years in Minneapolis,
Okay.
and it's not by plan. We always, again, this was when I joined Wells Fargo. I was thinking, oh, well, I'll spend 3 years here, 3 years there. Turned into 18 years in
18 years.
Minneapolis, in which we developed, very deep and true friendships there with them, with some folks there. So, but then, ultimately we got back here to the beach
Yeah.
and living the beach life.
And take care of family, and certainly for all of us at this period whose parents are still
Yeah.
living, there's a little bit of support of the parents going on
Yeah.
for a lot of us. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Prioritizing health and fitness,
Or,
prioritize obviously the family, and just keeping up, connecting with all of the people that have enriched our lives together. It's just that's what life's about right now. And so consulting on the side a little bit,
yeah.
if it appeals to
If it
us.
appeals, right? Sure.
Right,
Sure.
exactly, it's a nice place to be.
Absolutely. And then the West Point community there, do you have any grads around, you classmates, or do you keep in touch with anybody?
Yeah, I don't have any classmates per se, but in the community that we live in, and it's a golf community, beach community.
Yeah.
We have there are several academy grads, um, uh, mostly Navy and Army, some one or two Air Force. But I've kind of leaned into that community, and
Yeah.
like we have an annual dinner at our clubhouse and celebrate the military and our academies together like that. I mean, also, we have the West Point chapters down here and things like that we stay plugged in with. But
Yeah.
this little piece of the world is a nice little community, and the ability to stick, hang together with fellow military retirees and members is a good, an important part of my life for
Yeah.
sure.
Good. It's good. There's a certain familiarity and comfort with being able to associate some with folks like that.
Exactly.
I do it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
great.
Yep.
That's great. So not sure what comes next. What are your ideas in terms of, are you big travelers, or you think it's
Uh,
more,
yeah. We just
you got to heal the elbow up first, though, of course. That's
well, we did recently take our first major vacation together, just my wife and I, just Lori and I. In May, we went to Italy, and we spent 3 weeks
nice.
traveling around Italy, which didn't help my elbow either. I thought that not playing golf for a little while would help, but lifting the luggage and putting them on trains and
Right.
everything, that wasn't really conducive to tennis elbow. But yeah, so that was our first bucket list item type of thing
Okay.
that we wanted to do in terms of travel, because through the years our travel always consisted of coming home and visiting family.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right. Right. Right.
we have family all across the country, from California to Delaware to Louisiana to Tennessee to all over the place. So that's historically what our travel and vacations have
Right.
been like.
Right.
So now that we've experienced Italy, there, and that was really my wife's bucket list item. I'm thinking through, right? Do I want to hit Scotland or
Where you go to use, actually, you don't have to take it where you could go on a very scenic trip, but you only use a carry-on bag to use your left hand so you can rehabilitate that elbow. That's my
that'll
rehabilitation trip to South
right,
Africa for a safari.
right, and it'll probably involve golf clubs or something along the
Well,
line.
just to keep it loose. Just
Exactly.
keep it warm. Well,
That's
that's
right.
terrific. The world's your oyster. And it is an interesting switch that you mentioned where you go from working hard at a place and going to visit family to suddenly you're in the midst of family and then you're looking for other things to do. And I think a
Yeah,
lot
exactly. Exactly.
that's terrific stuff. We will see you at the reunion.
I will be there. Lori and I are going to
Excellent.
be there. We're going to be up a couple of times up to West Point this fall.
Oh,
We've
good.
got a couple of games we're going to get to, plus a reunion.
All
So
right.
looking forward to it.
Well, Tony Guzzi and Vic Lozier and those guys have that terrific tailgate up there, and let's
Absolutely.
all keep in touch when you're up there. That way, rather than going and walking around those cold hallways by yourself, you can walk around and maybe we can bounce off each other once again.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Really, I really am looking forward to the reunion again. I mean, these 5 years come by so quickly,
Yeah,
and again, it's another one of those things where when you see your classmates, face to face, and you're drinking a beer, having a conversation with, it's like you never left. It's
yeah,
kind of like, man, it feels like yesterday.
it really is true. It really is true. Is there anything we have not covered that you would love to share with classmates, or is there any story you haven't told?
Uh, I'm really pretty boring like that. No, I don't
I
have
don't know.
anything major. I mean, I really am living my full life here, enjoying a World Cup here in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah,
Looking forward to a game tonight to watch the U.S. hopefully advance,
yeah.
we got up to a game up in Philadelphia
Oh, you did it.
recently,
Good for you.
to one
Okay.
of the World Cup games. So it's a pretty exciting time. The 250th year celebrations
Yeah.
going on everywhere.
Hey,
It's a good time in life for us to enjoy what we have. So
absolutely, absolutely. Gary, what a pleasure catching up again and hearing your stories. And I'm sure the classmates are going to love it. It was fantastic talking to you.
all right, Paul, do some good editing for me, okay?
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Courage Never Quits podcast, where any member of the class of 1986 who is willing to tell their story will be a guest. To get the word out and stay up to date on the latest episodes, hit the like and subscribe button. With over 900 living graduates, we have a lot of stories to tell, and you don't want to miss any of them. We'll see you in the next episode.